So here is clutch number one, immediately post shed, and in fact two of these three snakes have already taken their first meals. Hi guys, it's Rob from Rollerballs, clutch number 5, actually the first of my possible Spotnose Clown clutches. I have 3 clutches to come. The first of them has now shed out. It's only 3 snakes, and we're going to take a look at those 3 snakes and see if we can identify them. First of all, I thought I'd recap the Spotnose Clown project from start to finish. Out here in this part of the world, Spotnose is not a common gene, and I could not buy one for love nor money, but I was able to procure a pastel Spotnose yellow belly male, and that was the starting point around about 4 years ago, and I grew that male up and bred him to a clown female to produce generation 2. And generation 3 has used some of those offspring in order to produce the next generation. So it's the 3rd generation, at least 3 years on, that is my first shot at a visual Spotnose Clown. Visual Spotnose Clown, no big deal you might think, but it's an indication of how much time, effort and planning a recessive project takes, and the satisfaction if you hit the goal is just as much as any other exotic project. Spotnose Clown is not common here. We need it to take some of our projects to the next level, and it will be fantastic if we get one. 3 clutches. This is the first one with only 3 snakes. So let's take a look back over the project and all the time and effort that's gone into it before we take a look at the hatchlings. So this is where it started for me more than 3 years ago. I bought this boy and grew him up. Spotnose was not readily available at the time, and this guy is a pastel yellow belly Spotnose. He is the grandfather of the clutches that you are going to see this year, my attempts at a Spotnose Clown. So this guy was just a straight Spotnose, and I had to make hets, and 2 years ago I paired this guy up to a pastel vanilla clown female to make my hets. So let's have a look at this guy. The Spotnose in him is not obvious. The yellow belly is. You can see the speckling on the belly there. Obviously pastel, but again the head stamp is a bit washed out by the pastel, but you can see that he has the classic square shaped head stamp. The back of the head is squared off, and he has a spot on the nose. The pattern itself is not actually very distinctive. We do get these bow ties down the back which a normal pastel wouldn't have, but the Spotnose is not easy to see in the pastel. So let's have a look at the hets that I made using this guy. This was 2 years ago, and I have clutches from some of that generation this year. So we're already in the 3rd generation, but this is where it started. This is Grandad. let's get the 4 spot nose babies out. Let's have a look at the 4 spot noses. So that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, and the final one, that's 4. So 4 spot noses. I think these 2 are the same. This one and this one are different. Can't keep them all together. Goodness, this is a big girl now. This is my Super Pastel Spotnose Vanilla Yellow Belly Hetfer Clown female, and she's looking very, very chunky. She is actually being paired. I'm trying to get a clutch from her this year. She is approaching 2 years old, so still a little bit young, but she's approaching 2 kilos as well. She's been a phenomenal eater. So we are pairing her just to see if she gives us a clutch of eggs this year. That would be really cool because she is Spotnose and Hetfer Clown. And everything else that's in the mix should just be awesome in our offspring. So this is Super Pastel Spotnose Vanilla Yellow Belly. Just look at that awesome flaming up the sides from the yellow belly. So we'll put this girl away. This is my Pastel Spotnose Yellow Belly Hetfer Clown male, and you can see in the little sidebar what he looked like when he was young. Everybody knows what pastel looks like. It's the brightening gene that gives the animal also a washed out head stamp. When you look at the babies all side by side, it actually becomes very easy to see which are the much more busier patterned spot noses. And you can see in this guy here also the typical spot nose templates that we look for in spot nose. Unfortunately for us, pastel washes out the head stamp. This girl here is the Super Pastel Spot Nose, and you can see from the group shot right at the start that the 3 spot noses in this clutch were actually fairly easy to pick out. Very, very busy pattern. Spot nose is quite characteristic when you see it in the clutch. The ones with spot nose and the ones without are fairly easy to pick out, but pastel, and particularly Super Pastel, do some weird things to the pattern. You can see that we get some crazy alien heads, which are a combination of both the spot nose and the pastel influence. But towards the tail end of the snake, you can see down here that spot nose actually starts to break up and gives these characteristic bell shapes along the base of the tail here. You can see that on both sides. Some of these extensions along the dorsal here, and another characteristic of spot nose are some of the hook shapes that you can see where the yellow alien heads actually extend up into the dorsal and hook around. That's also another characteristic of spot nose. You can also see at the front end of the snake a more blocky pattern. That's also typical spot nose. And in this particular case, you can also see from the head stamp, you can actually make out a typical spot nose head stamp. It is actually very washed out, but there is a spot on the nose. There's also a boxy hoof shaped head stamp. Again, very washed out. There's no dot in the middle as would be normal with spot nose, but the dash behind the neck, can you see that little extension here behind the neck, is also another characteristic of spot nose. So this girl is nowhere near as big as the one that we've just seen, the Super Pastel Spotnose Vanilla Yellow Belly girl. She's nowhere near as big as that. Not such a good eater initially, but she's eating now. She will be ready to breed next season, so I'm not too worried. So this is my Super Pastel Spotnose Het for Clown female. This is one of Grandad's daughters from last season. The pairing that produced this girl was to a Pastave vanilla, and we don't have vanilla, Mojave or pastel in this girl, so this is a Spotnose Yellow Belly, and both Spotnose and Yellow Belly must have come from Grandad. So let's take a look at this girl. There is absolutely no doubting at all that this is a Spotnose. Thank goodness, which means that Grandad is also Spotnose. So if we have a look at the head stamp, we have the classic Spotnose head stamp, the square box with the dot in the middle. That's very easy to see when you do not have pastel. We also have the very boxy pattern down the sides that Spotnose brings, and the Yellow Belly in this girl is quite obvious. You can see the digital markings on the belly and a slight yellow tint. This is Spotnose Yellow Belly, and this is one of Grandad's daughters from last year, so at least the foundations for the project are confirmed, and Dad is indeed a Spotnose, thank goodness. So this guy here is the son of Grandad that I showed initially. So this is second generation, and this is an exact copy of Dad. This is pastel Spotnose Yellow Belly, but this time Het for Clown, and you can see from the head stamp the very distinctive squared off hoof shaped head stamp, the very boxy head stamp on this guy. And if we just compare him to his father, you can see that they are actually spitting images. So here they are, father and son, exactly the same genetic combination, but son is Het for Clown, and he is the father for two of the clutches that I have produced this season. Two of the potential Spotnose Clown clutches that I have produced have been from this father, and I think you can see that actually this guy here is more visibly, obviously Spotnose than his dad is. But the same genetic combination, you can see exactly the same bow ties, the very boxy head stamp. So this is the sire for the third generation, the babies that we're about to look at and try and identify. So no doubt at all that father, second generation, is also Spotnose. This is pastel Yellow Belly Spotnose. So two clutches from the male paired to a visual clown, and this is the original male's daughter, now 2 years old. So she is the sister of the male that you just saw, and this is Super Pastel Spotnose Vanilla Yellow Belly, and she laid a clutch for me this year. We got 8 eggs, and she is paired to a visual clown. So again, no doubt at all that this is a Spotnose combo. I think you can see that just from looking at this girl. And this is my third shot at a Spotnose Clown this season. She has given me a clutch. They're in the incubator now. So she is less than 2 months from when she laid eggs, and she is already eating and packing on the weight again. You can see that she already looks quite good. So this is generation number 2. This is the mum. We've already seen the dad from generation number 2. The hatchlings are generation number 3. So we've been at this project for at least 3 years, and this is our shot at a visual Spotnose Clown. So that's the history. That's what we're looking for in the offspring. We're looking for Spotnose. Whether we get hets or whether we get visuals, I still need to be able to identify Spotnose. I do not need any more Spotnose Het for Clowns in my collection. I already have sufficient. But if I can identify Spotnose and they are all 100% hets, They should be a great leg up for somebody else in the Spotnose Clown project. So this little guy is a snake I produced in February this year. This is Pastel Spotnose, and it's a completely unrelated Spotnose. I used a different female borrowed from ARP to produce this guy, and this is a Pastel Spotnose het for Desert Ghost. Not het for Clown, unfortunately. It's not a double het, it's just het for Desert Ghost. You can see some of the classic Spotnose features in this guy. The very regular boxy like alien heads, the squirrely pattern down the back, and the head stamp. I want you to look closely at the head stamp there. You can see the boxy hoof shaped head stamp at the back that has slight points or ears on each side of it and a little dash at the back of the head. But you can also still see on this Pastel Spotnose a spot on the nose and two scales higher up that look like little teardrops. So this is Pastel Spotnose, and yes, it washes out a lot of the head stamp and a lot of the pattern that you see in Spotnose. This is still clearly Spotnose, but Pastel is having a profound influence on the pattern. So a completely unrelated snake that we can use to help us to identify some of the offspring that we're getting in this third generation Spotnose Clown project. So we'll be looking at this snake again and comparing him to some of the babies, because this is Pastel Spotnose. So here is clutch number 1, immediately post shed, and in fact two of these 3 snakes have already taken their first meals, and I have to say that we didn't get what we wanted in this first clutch. It's only 3 snakes. But let's have a look and see if we can actually identify what we got. Let's start out with the easy one first. This one clearly is the Visual Clown, and the pairing was a Super Pastel or Killer Clown to a Pastel Yellow Belly Spotnose Het for Clown male. So this is a female, and I believe this is simply a Pastel Clown. The lowest combo that we could get, because Mum was a visual Super Pastel Clown, is actually a Pastel Het for Clown. This is a Pastel Visual Clown, but it's about the lowest combo we could get. It's quite yellow, but I'm not seeing any indication in the belly that there is yellow belly. Just the normal pastel blushing in here. So I think just Pastel Clown, not Pastel Yellow Belly, although it is quite yellow. I'm calling this one Pastel Clown, and it's a female. Now, these 2 guys here are both obviously Super Pastels. Very, very blushed. If we look at the head stamps, you can see quite clearly that we have a double dose of pastel in both of these. So Super Pastel, they're obviously not clowns, so they are 100% het for clowns. This one is a little bit yellower than this one, so it is possible that this may have yellow belly in it and this one does not. I'm not 100% certain on that. The part that I am certain on is the Super Pastel Het for Clown part, but the biggest question is, do these have Spotnose in them? If we look at the head stamps, you will see that these are not the typical pastel head stamps. They have a very box shaped head stamp, and they also have the outward turned ends and the dash behind the head. If we have a look at the other one is even more pronounced. You'll see that it has the box shaped head stamp and the little ears or spikes behind the head. If we compare that to a normal Super Pastel head stamp, you can see the difference. The Super Pastel head stamp is quite a pronounced V with very straight edges. This guy here has little indents around the eyes, a squared off head stamp, and the back of the head stamp is also splayed out. That is not typical Super Pastel. This is typical Super Pastel, a very arrow shaped head stamp. This does not have the head stamp of a Super Pastel. The other thing about these two guys here is that they have a very, very busy pattern, and if we have a look at this guy and look at the side pattern here, very, very regular alien heads all the way down, very regularly spaced and quite pronounced. There's a nice margin, a nice high contrast margin to them. And if we have a look at the dorsal, you can also see some of the dorsal here. You've got the squirrely pattern on the dorsal and some little eyelets on the dorsal as well, which again is not typical of Super Pastel. This one is exactly the same, but not quite so yellow. Again, you can see when we open it out, the very, very regular boxy alien heads with a single dot. So these single teardrops are quite characteristic of Spotnose, but I have seen some Super Pastels which look quite similar to this as well. So again, what we can do is to compare that to a pastel Spotnose. This is a pastel Spotnose, and if we look at the head stamp on the pastel Spotnose, you can see the dash behind the head. If I can get the camera to focus, you can see the dash behind the head, the squared off head stamp or hoof shaped head stamp rather than the arrow head, and you can see these little ears here at the back of the head stamp. Very, very reminiscent of this guy. The ears behind the head stamp are exactly the same. This has a double dose of pastel, so it's much more washed out, but the head stamps are actually quite similar. Again, the Spotnose has the same blocky pattern on the body and the squirrely dorsal stripes. So this is pastel Spotnose compared to what I think are two Super Pastel Spotnoses. So I can't be 100% certain that these are actually Spotnose. I have had several second opinions. Some say yes, some say no. ARP has had a look at these and he also thinks that they are Spotnose. So I'm calling these Pastel Clown female, Super Pastel Spotnose Yellow Belly male, Super Pastel Spotnose male. Both of these het for clown, not visuals. I do have an adult Super Pastel Spotnose female, and it's the head stamp that I want you to look at there. Again, the boxy shaped head stamp with the little ears at the back of the head. Compare that to this guy here, and I think you can start to see the similarities in the head stamp. Okay, so this is an adult Super Pastel Spotnose. Again, single teardrop alien heads in a very, very regular pattern along the body of the snake, but it's the head stamp in this case that's the giveaway. These are not very high expression Spotnoses. It's very difficult to tell whether they are or they aren't, and I think the giveaway here is the busyness and regularness of the pattern plus the head stamps that suggest that these are actually Spotnose, not very high expression ones. Okay guys, so there you go. Those are the three snakes. I'm still not 100% certain on the IDs. I'm not 100% certain, believe it or not, that they are actually Spotnose. I think they are. We'll have a better idea when the next clutch comes out because there's fewer genes involved, so I think we'll have a better shot at seeing what Spotnose actually looks like. And I'll keep you posted on those clutches. I have 2 clutches due to hatch in the next week. Some pretty exciting stuff coming. The bulk of my clutches are still to hatch, and this is the payoff. This is really exciting. As I say, this project has been 4 years in the making from when I purchased the original male and produced my own hets. So that's an indication of how long it takes, how much effort it takes, and how important some of these clutches are. This is not about money. This is about projects and producing your gold snakes, and this is just fantastic to be in a position to see whether we've reached our goal. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to share, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.